Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere a little unexpected, across soft desert winds and under a moon that's been watching for thousands of years. You're lying back on a cool stone slab inside a temple, incense curling through the air like lazy snakes. There's a flicker of torchlight on the wall, and some high priest just handed you a fig soaked in wine. It's not just bedtime, it's a ritual. You probably won't know this, but in ancient Egypt, dreaming wasn't just something that happened to you. It was something you did on purpose. Dreaming was a healing act, part of medicine and mysticism, all bundled up like linen around a mummy. You could literally check into a sleep sanctuary the way you'd check into a spa today, except instead of hot stones and cucumber water, you'd get fasting, chanting, and probably some advice from a crocodile god. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere special, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge slowly across golden sand, sandals whispering with each step. The Nile is quiet, a soft hush in the distance, and you can smell something herbal. Maybe blue lotus, maybe just someone. Essence sense obsession. The air is warm, but still, you've come to a temple to dream, and not in the follow your goals way. Here, people dream for healing, guidance, and sometimes a direct message from the gods themselves. The psychological idea of dreams as a source of truth or restoration isn't unique to Egypt, but the Egyptians really leaned into it. This wasn't just "I had a weird dream" chatter, it was systematic, sacred, and surprisingly clinical. Imagine walking into a hospital where instead of getting weighed and prodded, you're offered a mat in a sacred chamber and encouraged to sleep until a god tells you what's wrong. Modern psychology might frame this as a combination of suggestion, symbolic processing, and the body's own capacity to heal during sleep. Studies have shown that dreaming supports memory consolidation and emotional regulation. When you dream, your brain's limbic system lights up, especially the amygdala, which processes emotions. So dreaming literally helps you feel your feelings without interrupting your actual life or taxes. But ancient Egyptians took it one step further. They didn't just let dreams happen, they designed them. They built temples for sleeping, invented rituals to prep the mind, and wrote down thousands of dreams in painstaking detail. They had a literal dream industry, of course. Philosophers still argue whether these practices genuinely aided healing or simply acted as ancient placebo therapy. But what certain is that people believed. They believed deeply that dreams had power, that gods whispered truth, and that sleep could mend what medicine could not. And let's be honest, you've probably had a dream that stayed with you, right? One that made you wake up oddly calm, like something got processed under the hood. The Egyptians felt that too, except their mechanic was the falcon, headed horse, and he charged. In papyrus, not insurance. The soothing thing here is this: these people didn't treat rest as lazy. They treated it as active, essential, and even divine. They didn't think healing had to hurt. Sometime it could happen in silence, in shadow, with your eyes closed and your soul slightly ajar. So tonight you rest on your metaphorical dream bed. You're not looking for a miracle, just a moment. A moment to drift beyond the clamor of your day into something older than reason, softer than speech, and maybe, just maybe, sacred. And just as you start to drift, you hear it. A soft voice in your dream saying something you don't quite understand, but somehow it makes you feel better anyway. The temple's stone walls hum with quiet energy, as if holding their breath for centuries. You're led by a priest in long white linen, his footsteps a soft rhythm behind yours. The room you enter isn't a grand hall, but something more intimate, low, lit, aromatic, and full of cushions that look questionably clean but spiritually approved. This is the mammoth, the birthing house for dreams. You're not just going to sleep here, you're going to receive. The Egyptians called it temple sleep or dream incubation, and it wasn't a one-size-fits-all ritual. You didn't just flop down and hope Ra stopped by with a love note. Oh no, you had to prepare, fasting, bathing, chanting the correct hymns. maybe abstaining from certain behaviors, you can guess which. You are cleansing your body and mind, aligning yourself for the divine hotline that only opens between 2 and 4 a.m. Some temples were dedicated entirely to this practice, especially those devoted to gods of healing like Imhotep and Serapis. These weren't casual deities either. Imhotep was a real man once, a priest, physician, and architect who became so respected that he was deified posthumously. Imagine your local pharmacist becoming a saint and a Marvel character. That's Imhotep. You're told to lie on a ceremonial mat near a statue of the god. You can feel the coolness of the floor seep through the thin layers of cloth beneath you. There's something comforting about the silence, no phones buzzing, no text to ignore politely, just breath, incense, and anticipation. And here's the twist. People didn't just come for healing from headaches or sprained ankles. They came for big stuff: infertility, grief, prophetic visions. Sometimes they wanted the gods to cure them, and sometimes they wanted permission to forgive themselves. In a way, it wasn't so different from modern therapy. You speak, you listen, and you hope something wiser than you answers. Psychologists today have examined dream incubation with a surprising level of seriousness. A 2020 study suggested that people who set intentions before sleep were more likely to dream about those intentions. Your brain, it turns out, is not a passive passenger during sleep. It's a creative problem solver, especially during REM. So if you told it, please resolve this stress, it might just try. That's essentially what these ancient temples were: structured psychological suggestion rituals wrapped in gold paint and sacred geometry. The process was designed to tell your brain, this night matters, this dream matters. Pay attention. But of course, the fringe tidbits are where things get spicy. Some temples had dream snakes, yes, real, ones slithering freely around the sleep chambers. The logic: snakes were sacred to healing gods, shedding their skin like symptoms shedding from the body. If a snake brushed against you in the night, it meant divine favor. If you stepped on one going to the bathroom, well, let's hope it was symbolic. Philosophers still argue whether the physical space of temples, high ceilings, echoing halls, the faint drip of water, intentionally triggered altered states of consciousness. Was it architecture as therapy, a place designed to lull you into suggestibility? Or was it just very good ambiance for spiritual placebo? Either way, lying there now, under the half-lidded gaze of painted gods, you feel something shift. Maybe it's just the weight of silence, or maybe it's the knowledge that here, for a brief moment in history, sleep was considered sacred duty, not indulgence. Your eyes close. Somewhere in your mind, the idea takes root. Healing isn't always noisy. Sometimes it sounds like nothing at all. You're getting used to the rhythm of the temple now. Its stillness, its muffled murmurs, its air that smells permanently like crushed herbs and sun-warmed stone. You're lying on your ceremonial mat again tonight, freshly bathed in the river, belly empty after a long fast, and mildly uncertain about whether that last chant was in praise of a god or a good harvest. Either way, your priest seemed impressed. Tonight, you're preparing for what the ancient Egyptians considered true dream therapy. But don't expect a gentle drift into sleep. This isn't just lying down and hoping for REM. It's a deliberate descent guided by ritual. You've rubbed yourself with special oils, some calming, others meant to invite visions. And you've been told to focus on the part of your body that needs healing, kind of like meditation, but with more crocodile fat involved. Yes, really. There are texts that suggest various dream-enhancing ointments were used, some with ingredients you'd recognize like myrrh or honey, and some that, well, would get a raised eyebrow in a modern apothecary. One dream ritual required placing a bit of crocodile dung on the chest to open the heart to the gods. Whether the gods were impressed or just trying to avoid eye contact, no one knows. Modern psychology would frame this as ritualistic priming. You perform a series of sensory experiences, rubbing, fasting, chanting, that train the brain to enter a suggestible state. And when you believe you're about to connect with something divine, your brain behaves accordingly. There's solid science behind this. Studies on placebo responses show that the brain can actually trigger healing processes when it expects relief. Expectation, it turns out, is powerful medicine. But this isn't just placebo. These rituals involved intention, setting, sensory deprivation, and community. Affirmation, 3 ingredients that modern therapists still use in various forms. Think guided meditation, flotation tanks, or group hypnotherapy. The priests just had cooler robes. In the temple, your dream might come after several nights of effort. People didn't always succeed on the first try. Some stayed for days. Others claimed they saw nothing, no visions, no voices, just regular sleep. And even then, the priests might still find meaning in the silence. Maybe the god. Silence was the message. Fringe accounts tell of dreamers who saw elaborate symbols, falcons flying into their mouths, rivers turning to blood, or children with animal heads delivering scrolls. These weren't seen as nightmares, but metaphors. The high priest would decode them, a bit like a sleep therapist mixed with a game show host. Ah yes, the crocodile eating grapes, that means your liver is strong, but your marriage is cursed. Scholars today still debate whether these rituals were truly therapeutic or more like spiritual performance art, where participants healed or simply comforted by the process of trying to heal. You shift slightly on your mat. The temple is hushed. Outside, someone is singing softly, almost too far away to make out the words. You imagine the crocodile god Sabek looking down at you with his wide, toothy grin. He's probably wondering if you remembered all the right oils. And as you drift, you realize how much effort they gave to rest, not just sleep, but rest with structure, with meaning, with hope. In a world full of chaos, sometimes sleep was the only safe space where your soul could whisper back to you. Your breathing slows. You think of the chant. You think of the god. And you wonder not whether it's real, but whether believing is already enough. Your dreams tonight are odd. There's a lion wearing a headdress telling you to drink more water. A falcon flies in slow circles overhead, dropping lotus petals onto your hands. And there's a snake, again with unsettlingly good posture. But when you wake, the priest is nodding like everything makes perfect sense. Apparently, you've had a healing visitation. Congratulations. Also, maybe lay off the onions. In the world of ancient Egyptian psychology, if we can call it that, animals weren't just symbolic, they were sacred messengers, and in dreams they spoke for the gods. You've already met the crocodile, whose presence could signal everything from fertility to digestive health, depending on what he was doing. But there were many more: cats, baboons, even scarab beetles making special appearances like celebrity cameos in a divine sitcom. Let's start with serpents. Snakes were considered both protectors and warners. A dream with a snake could be a sign of healing, shedding the past, literally sloughing off sickness, or it could mean danger slithering near. It all depended on context. Was the snake calm? Aggressive? Did it speak in rhyme? These details mattered. Your priest would interpret them with the seriousness of a modern therapist dissecting your stress dream about high school exams. Mainstream psychology also pays attention to animal symbolism. Carl Jung, for example, suggested that animals in dreams often represent instincts or repressed emotions. A lion might symbolize courage or rage. A bird could mean hope or a desire for freedom. The Egyptians didn't invent this interpretation, but they institutionalized it. Your lion didn't just mean something personal, it was believed to be something divine. Sometimes animals didn't just visit dreams, they were dreams. They were dreams. There are records of dreamers reporting themselves transforming into hawks, cats, even crocodiles during sleep. Scholars still debate whether these dreams were metaphorical or induced by, shall we say, herbal encouragement. Either way, the result was a vivid belief that animals were spiritual vessels. And don't forget the scarab beetle, yes, the dung, rolling bug that Egyptians practically worshipped. Dreaming of scarabs was considered highly auspicious. They symbolized rebirth, transformation, and resilience. Also, they were relentless. Imagine a dream beetle rolling your stress away, one crumb at a time. From a neurological perspective, animals appear frequently in REM stage dreams. Some theories suggest it's evolutionary. Our ancient brains learned to scan for movement, for animal threats, even in rest. So when you dream of being chased by a bear or petting a llama with human eyes, your brain is doing its primal best to keep you entertained and slightly alarmed. But back in the temple, the animals are calm, patient, and deeply symbolic. They're guides through your inner desert. A lion may nudge you toward courage. A cat might mean protection. Bastet was the goddess of cats, after all, and falcons, always a good sign. Horus, the falcon-headed god, was believed to protect royalty and restore order. Now imagine you're a farmer from a small village who's made the long trek to this temple. You've fasted, you've prayed, you've slept, and you dreamed of a baboon handing you a fig. To you, it's nonsense, but the priest tells you it's a blessing from Thoth, the baboon-faced god of wisdom. Suddenly, your shoulder pain feels lighter. Coincidence, suggestion, or something else entirely. Philosophers still argue whether these dream animals were just mental projections or if they reflected a deeper archetypal language, the same unconscious imagery Jung would later call the collective unconscious. Either way, it gave people something to hold on to, a message, a guide, a fig. So tonight, as you drift again, you let the animals come. You don't chase them, you don't question them, you just observe. A soft paw brushes your hand. Wings rustle above you, and in the quiet desert of your mind, healing begins to walk on four legs. The priest greets you at sunrise with a small scroll and an eyebrow that suggests you said something interesting in your sleep. Apparently, during the night, you mumbled something about milk falling from the stars. He nods like that's normal. It probably is. You're taken to a quieter chamber this morning, one lined with shelves and delicate rolls of papyrus, each cataloging someone's inner world. Welcome to the ancient Egyptian sleep archive, a dream library, if you will. Here, scribes documented what people dreamed, how they dreamed it, and what it was supposed to mean. This wasn't idle curiosity. This was data. Data for healing, for prophecy, and for decoding the symbolic mess that is your unconscious. The Egyptians took dreams so seriously that they had entire manuals for interpreting them. One of the most famous is the Chester Beatty Papyrus, a dream book dating back to around 1279 base. Think of it as the ancient version of Googling, what does it mean if I dream of flying and my teeth fall out at the same time? Except in this version, you might be told you're about to inherit a donkey or become a priest. In these texts, dreams were split into good and bad. Dreaming of eating crocodile meat, apparently good. Dreaming of your own death, weirdly also good. Dreams were often interpreted oppositely. Bad omens could mean good fortune and vice versa. Kind of like life insurance. If you don't need it, you have it. Psychologically, this aligns with the idea that the brain processes contradictions during REM sleep. You take in messy emotional material and your brain reorganizes it, often in the form of surreal narratives. In modern dream therapy, therapists will encourage patients to write down their dreams upon waking, then look for emotional patterns, not just literal meanings. Ancient scribes were doing a version of that, just with more ink and less caffeine. The scribes themselves weren't always priests. Sometimes they were specialized dream recorders, tasked with the delicate job of preserving not just the details but the mood. Dreamed of bird delivering scroll wasn't enough. They needed how you felt. Were you scared, at peace, confused? The emotional tone mattered. You picture one of them now, bent over a wooden desk, stylus in hand, copying down someone's sleepy ramblings about a hippo that knows all their secrets. What an oddly tender job, preserving someone's night mind, translating subconscious whispers into ink. Here's a quirky bit. Some of the earliest known dream dictionaries divided dreams by who had them. A soldier's dream of fire might mean something entirely different than a farmer's. Context mattered. Your job, your gender, even your level of purity could affect what the gods were trying to say. In a way that's oddly progressive, acknowledging that different lives shape different inner landscapes, philosophers still argue whether this dream recording practice was a form of primitive psychotherapy or a cultural art form with religious overtones. Did it actually heal, or did it simply create a narrative that helped people cope? Think about it. When you write down your own dreams now, if you ever do, it's usually to make sense of something, to look for clues. That instinct isn't new. Humans have always wanted to understand themselves, especially when the conscious mind won't cooperate. As the priest hands you your own scroll freshly written, he suggests you sleep again tomorrow night. The gods aren't done yet, apparently. Your dream isn't over, it's unfolding. A slow story told in moonlight and memory. So tonight, you'll return. You'll lie on the mat again. You'll listen to the crackle of oil lamps and the hush of the Nile beyond the walls, and maybe you'll dream of a fox in sandals offering you tea. If you do, write it down. You wake with a start, not because of a nightmare, but because someone is gently tapping a wooden staff near your ear. The priest is smiling, which is either comforting or ominous, depending on how much you trust people holding staffs at dawn. The god has spoken, he says, as if that clears everything up. You're led into a cooler chamber, the walls painted with images of long-gone rituals, figures reclining, gods standing at their heads, and physicians holding what looks suspiciously like a pair of surgical tongs. Today, you're learning that sometimes ancient Egyptian dreams didn't just offer vague encouragement or cryptic symbols. Sometimes, they offered instructions, very specific ones, like cut open the sore on your left thigh under the full moon, and pack it with salt and honey. Welcome to the surprisingly literal world of dream, prescribed medicine. Yes, ancient Egyptians sometimes used dreams to guide physical procedures. And when those dreams came from divine sources, people actually followed them. It wasn't considered foolish, it was sacred protocol. If Imhotep, god of medicine, told you in a dream to lance a boil, you didn't argue. You found a sharp blade and started heating it over a flame. This wasn't entirely blind faith. The Egyptians were skilled in basic medicine, setting bones, treating infections, and performing minor surgeries. They had surgical instruments that look eerily modern, like forceps, scalpels, and even clamps. They used antiseptic substances, like honey and copper salts, and they understood wound care better than you might expect from people who still thought the heart produced thoughts. Modern psychology might frame this interplay between dream and action as somatic reinforcement, the belief that your body and your mind aren't separate, but collaborators. When your subconscious tells you something's wrong and gives you an image to fix it, you're more likely to take that message seriously. Today, it's called mind-body medicine. Back then, it was divine intervention. Of course, philosophers still debate whether this crossover between dreams and surgery was helpful or dangerous. Were people accidentally treating themselves with divine advice that amounted to rub dirt in it? Or were these rituals surprisingly effective, a way of activating the placebo effect and the body's own immune system? One fringe account, found in temple records near Saqqara, of a man who dreamed that a jackal whispered, directing on how to remove a snake-bite toxin. He followed the dream to the letter and survived, though some scholars suspect this was less about divine aid and more about, timed tourniquet use. Still, if you believed it was Anubis who saved you, your gratitude went to the god, not the clotting factor in your blood. Back in the temple, you're now being offered a poultice made of dates, frankincense, and something chalky that smells like burnt almonds. You don't ask questions. You just nod politely. After all, your dream involved a bird pecking your shoulder 3 times and then flying off with a red ribbon in its beak. Apparently, this means imbalance in the shoulder chakras, or more likely mild tendinitis. Dream. Prescribed treatment wasn't always invasive. Sometimes it meant a change in behavior, a shift in diet, or a vow to stop holding grudges. You might be told to avoid certain foods, sing a hymn for 7 days, or carry a particular stone close to your chest. These rituals weren't just about superstition, they were about rhythm, meaning, and repetition. And repetition in psychological terms is powerful. It builds patterns, creates safety, and helps rewire the brain. Today, therapists sometimes use imagery rehearsal therapy to treat trauma dreams. Patients visualize a dream repeatedly during waking hours, rewriting the scary parts, transforming the narrative, transforming the narrative. It's not so different from dream. Prescribed rituals both create a sense of agency over the story. So now, reclining on your temple mat with a faint smear of honey, something on your shoulder, you reflect on how this system, ancient, symbolic, maybe a little sticky, wasn't so primitive after all. The body believed the dream and the mind followed the body. Your breath deepens. You close your eyes again. Maybe tonight, a donkey will tell you to stretch more, or maybe the gods will just let you rest. By now, you're no longer surprised when the dreams come wearing togas or carrying baskets, or morphing into animals halfway through a sentence. You've started to expect it, but tonight something different happens. You dream of a figure. A tall man with curly hair draped in Greek robes with the beard of someone who's definitely published scrolls. His presence is calm, authoritative, and slightly theatrical. He introduces himself with a name that sounds half Egyptian, half Greek, Serapis. When you wake, the priest is beaming. You were visited by the healing god, he says, with all the enthusiasm of a pharmacist who's just found the last bottle of cough syrup. This wasn't just any dream. This was a divine consult. Serapis is one of those gods who shows up halfway through the story like a rebooted character. He wasn't originally part of the Egyptian pantheon. He was introduced during the Ptolemaic era, a time when Greek rulers took over Egypt and, in a kind of religious power campaign, mashed together their gods with local ones to appeal to everyone. Result: Serapis, part Osiris, part Apes, part Zeus, part Asclepios. Serapis was a cultural smoothie of healing, wisdom, and authority. In statues, he looked more Greek than Egyptian, complete with a flowing beard, curly hair, and a modish tunic. But in dreams, he was pure presence. People said his voice echoed, that he smelled faintly of myrrh and olives, that even when you woke, you remembered how it felt to be near him. Psychologically, this figure operates as a classic archetype, the wise healer. He's the embodiment of comfort, strength, and deeper knowing. Carl Jung would have been thrilled. Serapis was essentially a therapeutic figure summoned by the dreaming mind in a form it trusted, and he was accessible. You didn't have to be royalty or a priest to dream of him, just sincere. In fact, many healing dreams recorded at Serapis temples included direct advice. Drink the bitter water, one dream said. Walk alone until your leg grows warm, said another. Not exactly clinical, but somehow intuitive. Serapis didn't perform miracles so much as whisper prescriptions. You still had to follow through. Fringe records even tell of people claiming to be touched by Serapis during sleep, a warmth in the chest, a sensation of hands on the forehead, or a sudden clarity about what to do next. Was it divine intervention, or the brain's way of confirming a decision you weren't ready to make while awake? Philosophers still argue whether gods like Serapis were inventions of political strategy or genuine spiritual experiences shaped by centuries of collective belief. Either way, the results were real. People felt healed. They returned to their villages changed. Not always cured, but altered. Modern sleep researchers might explain this using the visitation dream model, where the dreamer encounters a figure that seems other, not quite a projection of the self. These dreams often occur during transitions, illness, grief, life shifts. The mind generates guidance in the form of someone else, and Serapis fit the role perfectly. He wasn't just a god of healing. He was a god of synthesis, melding cultures, symbols, beliefs. He stood at the crossroads between logic and ritual, between empirical healing and emotional closure. A therapist with divine credentials. You imagine him now, sitting calmly in a marble chair that somehow glows in moonlight, waiting patiently while you bumble through your questions. He doesn't answer everything, but he makes you feel like the answer might not be the point. So tonight you close your eyes once more, silently inviting him back. Whether he returns or not, you know this. Something ancient watches over your sleep, not with judgment, but with the soft, unwavering attention of a god who whispers instead of shouts. It's your 5th night in the temple, and honestly, your body is adjusting. The hard stone doesn't seem so hard anymore. The chants don't sound quite so eerie. And the dreams, well, they've gone from peculiar to eerily informative. Last night, you saw yourself standing in a boat made of feathers, holding a loaf of bread while your aunt yelled something about fish. When you told the priest, he nodded solemnly and whispered, "You are ready today." The lesson is all about diagnosis, not blood tests or thermometers. Those came a few millennia later. In ancient Egypt, diagnosis often began with a dream. You didn't tell the healer what hurt, you told them what you saw, and they connected the dots. It sounds bizarre, but it's not so far from what therapists do today. Describe a dream to a modern psychologist, and they might ask how you felt during it. Not whether you actually fought off a 3-headed duck, but what emotions were stirred. That's because your subconscious communicates in imagery, sometimes absurd, sometimes poignant, always symbolic. Ancient Egyptians understood this. They just took it way more literally. If you dreamed of falling, might mean something's wrong in the spine. Bitten by a snake. Check your gut. Dreamed of drinking dirty water. Could be liver trouble. These weren't metaphors. They were symptoms. Priests and temple healers used dream symbols as diagnostic tools. The logic was, if the gods cared enough to show you a vision, they probably meant for you to do something about it. Healing didn't come from passive faith, it came from recognizing the signs, even if the signs involved talking hippos. And here's the twist. This wasn't reserved for the wealthy. Commoners came to healing temples too, seeking interpretation. Sure, the elite had fancier mats and more elaborate oils, but healing dreams were a shared experience. It was a democratized belief system. Anyone could receive a vision. Anyone could be heard. Now, there was some hierarchy. Priests were the interpreters, the analysts, the trained readers of the subconscious. You didn't analyze your own dream. That would be like diagnosing your own Ray. Instead, you shared the dream, and the priest deciphered its meaning using a mix of dream books, intuition, and good old-fashioned authority. Mainstream psychology today includes similar dynamics. A therapist interprets dream content not as prophecy, but as reflections of internal conflict. And just like the temple priest, their goal isn't to tell you the future, it's to give shape to the unspoken, to map what you haven't yet dared to say out loud. There's even a case to be made that this process helps the body heal, not just the mind. Research on psychosomatic illness has shown that unresolved emotional conflict can manifest physically: headaches, stomach issues, fatigue. In this way, ancient dream diagnosis wasn't so far off. Emotional clarity can lead to physical relief. Fringe tidbit time. 1. Temple archive tells of a woman who dreamed of being locked in a jar of honey. The priest declared her body was too sweet, not in the poetic sense, but literally. Some scholars think it was a primitive observation of diabetes-like symptoms. Others argue the priest was just improvising with flair. Philosophers still argue whether these diagnoses were insightful or just highly poetic guesswork. But what's clear is that people left the temple feeling seen, and sometimes that's the first step toward healing. So tonight, you lie back again. You focus your thoughts on your heart, or maybe that ache in your shoulder. You ask the gods not with words, but with openness. And in the silence of sleep, a vision comes. A glowing fish floating sideways, nudging your chest with its nose. No, you don't know what it means, but that's what the morning is for. It's morning again. The temple's outer courtyard glows with soft golden light, and you're sipping a mild herbal infusion that might be tea, or just slightly warm river water. Either way, it tastes vaguely like optimism. The priest joins you and begins explaining that last night's fish dream was actually very significant. It's about longing, he says, in that quiet, all-knowing tone priests reserve for things they've only half deciphered. But before you can ask too many questions, he brings out a scroll. It's old, older than anything you've touched. This, he says, was from a man named Freud. And just like that, you're yanked from the soft linen of ancient Egypt into the stiff, collared world of Viennese psychoanalysis. Yes, Sigmund Freud, the father of modern dream interpretation, had a thing for Egypt. He collected Egyptian artifacts. He kept little statues of gods on his desk. He named his famous psychoanalytic space the temple, with the seriousness of someone who had never actually been inside a temple but very much liked the idea of one. And he saw dreams as the royal road to the unconscious. Freud believed that dreams were disguised wish fulfillments. You don't dream of a fish because it's cute. You dream of a fish because your subconscious is hiding something too spicy for daylight. According to Freud, every symbol had a hidden meaning, usually involving suppressed emotions, unresolved conflict, and more than a few repressed urges. Basically, if you told Freud about your dream, you'd end up learning something, and probably blushing. Of course, Freud's ideas were deeply shaped by Western philosophy and culture, but his obsession with Egypt wasn't random. He saw the ancient dream temples as early versions of what he was trying to build, a structured space where the mind could be explored, decoded, and maybe even healed. He saw himself not just as a doctor, but as a priest of a new kind of temple of the unconscious. Modern psychologists have a complicated relationship with Freud. Some of his ideas have aged like fine wine, others like room temperature milk. But the core insight that dreams are meaningful, that they reflect our inner world, has endured. In fact, cognitive neuroscientists today still study dream content as a way to understand emotional regulation and memory consolidation. While Freud saw dreams as secrets, modern science often sees them as system updates. But here's the curious overlap. The Egyptians also believed that dreams told the truth, just not the same kind of truth. Where Freud searched for sexual tension and childhood wounds, the priests looked for divine signals and metaphysical balance. Yet both believed something powerful was at work when you closed your eyes. Fringe trivia for you. Freud actually had a dream of an ancient Egyptian statue, once a sphinx, that turned into his mother. He wrote about it. Scholars still debate what it meant, because of course they do. But it's fascinating that even the man who analyzed dreams couldn't always explain his own. Philosophers still argue whether Freud's dream theories were a product of his time or timeless insights into human psychology. But in this temple, with incense purling around your ankles and the sound of sandals brushing stone, you get the sense that maybe both are true. So now, sipping whatever this leafy brew is, you look around the courtyard and think, dreaming might be the one human act that never really changed. From pharaohs to psychologists, we've always wanted to know what sleep is trying to tell us. We still build temples, some out of stone, some out of schedules. And we still hope that behind the dream there's a message just waiting to be heard. Tonight, maybe Freud visits your dreams. Maybe he's carrying a notepad. Maybe he's riding a fish. Stranger things have happened. The stars come out over the temple again, bright and scattered like thoughts you haven't finished yet. You're stretched out on your mat, the stone underneath surprisingly warm, as if it remembers everyone who ever laid here before you. Tonight, you're not just hoping for a message or a godly cameo. You're curious about what your brain is actually doing. Because while the ancient Egyptians thought dreams came from the gods, today, science has a different theory. Your brain, even while you sleep, is on the clock. Modern neuroscience tells us that dreaming isn't just random, it's maintenance. Like a night shift janitor with opinions, your brain uses REM sleep to sort, process, and discard data from your day. Studies using EEGs and fMRI scans have shown that during dreams, the brain's limbic system, your emotional command center, is wide awake, while your prefrontal cortex, the part that handles logic and filters out embarrassing memories, is mostly asleep. That's why dreams are often vivid, emotional, and, well, slightly ridiculous. But it's not just a chaos party in there. Researchers now believe that dreaming helps with emotional regulation. Say you've had a stressful day, boss yelled at you, your cat judged you, you dropped spaghetti on your foot. That emotional tension doesn't just disappear. During REM sleep, your brain replays parts of that stress in symbolic form, often softening the blow. In a way, your mind is rehearsing healing, taking messy moments and wrapping them in metaphor. Here's the cool part. Some scientists think dreams act like overnight therapy. Instead of talking it out with a professional, your brain kind of plays therapist and patient at the same time. It might dramatize a fear as a strange animal, or turn anxiety into an endless hallway. You wake up feeling not fixed, but maybe lighter, maybe more prepared. That echoes what ancient Egyptians believed. They just used different language. For them, the dream was a visitation, not a brain function, but the outcome was similar. Insight, release, direction. Fringe discovery alert. In 2021, researchers at Northwestern University successfully communicated with lucid dreamers during their dreams using simple yes, no questions, and light cues. That means dreams aren't sealed chambers, they can be influenced in real time, which frankly would have blown an Egyptian priest's linen headwear clean off. Philosophers still argue whether dreams are primarily cognitive housekeeping or something more transcendent. Is your dream about forgetting your locker combo just your brain filing data, or is it a symbolic reminder that you're hiding something from yourself? Back in the temple, you're told to focus not on what you dream, but on how it makes you feel. That's the secret sauce. Ancient priests paid attention to emotional tone. Was the dream peaceful, chaotic, warm, scary? The feeling was the clue. Today's therapists do the same. So you settle into your mat, heartbeat slowing, breaths deepening. You think of the gods, the scrolls, the oddly charming snake who winked at you last night. And you let go. You trust that your brain knows what it's doing, even when it shows you a canoe made of bread. Because whether it's divine or dopamine, what matters most is that dreaming helps. It untangles you one weird image at a time. This morning, the temple feels different, lighter somehow. A breeze filters through the stone corridors, carrying the scent of papyrus and old incense, like someone just cleaned out a drawer of forgotten thoughts. You're greeted not with a scroll or a fresh cup of this tea, but with a question. Did you believe it worked? Because now we're getting into the strange and powerful terrain of belief. The ancient Egyptians understood something modern psychology is just beginning to fully respect. Believing in your own healing, even if you're not sure how it works, can be transformative. Welcome to the ancient power of the placebo. You may have heard that word tossed around with a bit of medical side eye. In clinical trials, it means someone received a sugar pill instead of actual medicine. But get this, placebos have been shown over and over to actually trigger real changes in the brain and body, especially in areas like pain, anxiety, and fatigue. The catch, you have to believe it's helping. That's where the ancient dream temples really shine. Everything about them, the rituals, the chanting, the oils, the sacred architecture, the white linen uniforms, was designed to reinforce belief. If you walked in half skeptical, you left fully primed. You were bathed in symbolism, supported by priests, surrounded by others who were also seeking. It wasn't just a nap. It was immersive psychological conditioning. Modern psychologists call this contextual healing, the idea that environment, trust, and expectation can play a major role in recovery. It's why a warm doctor with a kind smile often has better patient outcomes than a cold, rushed one, even if they prescribe the same thing. Our bodies and brains are constantly reading the cues around us. In the temple, the priest didn't hand you a prescription. He handed you permission to rest, to let go, to imagine being whole again. That permission alone can flip a switch in the nervous system. Parasympathetic response kicks in, stress hormones drop, and the body shifts into repair mode. It's not magic, it's biology, and it's stunningly responsive to belief. Fringe fact, in one peculiar case from ancient records, a man claimed to be healed after dreaming that a lion licked his wound. The priest didn't give him medicine. He just told him, "Die." Lion's tongue is stronger than illness. The man walked out limping less than he had in days. Was it faith? Was it adrenaline? Philosophers still argue about that. But either way, the man believed, and his body followed suit. Here's the thing, we still do this today. People heal in places that feel sacred to them, churches, gardens. Yoga studios, even bookstores with the right smell. Healing doesn't always need proof. Sometimes it just needs plausibility, that slight crack in skepticism where light can get in. In a way, the Egyptian priests were early behavioral psychologists. They used tools we now understand more clearly: ritual, repetition, authority, community, to create environments that maximized belief and minimized resistance. And yes, some of it may have been theater, but even theater can heal when the story is one you desperately need to hear. So you think back to your own dream last night, a simple one. You were sitting under a tree, holding a smooth stone in your hand, feeling calm, nothing fancy. No gods, no animals, no instructions. Just stillness. You tell the priest. He nods. The dream says, "You are ready," he says, with that unreadable priest smile. Ready for what? He doesn't say. Maybe that's the point. Tonight, you'll return to your mat one more time. Not searching for visions or symbols, but simply trusting the ritual. Trusting that even now, as you exhale and sink deeper into quiet, something inside you is shifting. Not because of magic, not because of science, but because you believe it's time. The sounds of the temple fade as night rolls in again. Torches flicker in their carved wall sconces, casting long, slow shadows that move like they're stretching after a long nap. You know the way by now. The hallway that hums, the priest with the crooked smile. The mat that isn't comfortable exactly, but now feels like home. But tonight, your mind drifts to something different. Not the gods, not the dreams, but the people outside the temple, the ones who aren't here. The ones who never get the dream bed, the fig offering, or the priest's gentle reassurance. The reality is, in ancient Egypt, just like now, access to healing wasn't always equal. Sacred sleep was a privilege. The rituals, the oils, the priestly interpretations, they were open to the public, but available mostly to those with the time, the resources, or the connections. If you were a farmer deep in harvest season or a servant bound by duty, making a pilgrimage to a dream temple wasn't exactly on the weekly calendar. And even if you did come, you might find yourself sleeping outside the inner sanctum, without the oils, without the linen, and definitely without the crocodile fat treatment. This is where psychology starts to brush up against sociology. Who gets to rest? Who gets to heal? It's an old question, and not just Egyptian. Across history, ritualized healing has always been entangled with class, gender, and status. Sleep itself, in its most luxurious form, is still something unevenly distributed. Think about it today. Sleep studies are mostly conducted in clinics with $5,000 beds. Sleep apps cost money. Dream journals are sold on Etsy with gold foil covers. But somewhere, someone's sleeping on a break room floor. Even in ancient texts, this contrast shows up. There are mentions of people who dreamed without temple access, dreams caught on the fly during work naps or in noisy courtyards. These weren't dismissed. Sometimes they were even seen as more pure, untouched by ritual, spontaneous, unfiltered. The divine reaching down to a sleeping mind without incense, without preparation, without permission. Fringe note: there's a preserved fragment from a domestic wall in a small Egyptian village that reads, roughly translated, "I dreamed of you in the sunlight. No temple, no priest, just someone recording a private moment on a mud brick wall," maybe to remember it, or maybe to show that healing dreams aren't always sacred. They can also be personal. Philosophers still argue whether sacred dreaming lost some of its meaning when it became institutionalized. Does adding ritual and hierarchy improve the process or dilute its intimacy? Einers. Do we dream better in temples or just more loudly? Either way, the contrast is part of the story. The inner chamber and the outer alley, the scrolls and the whispers, one isn't more real than the other. They're just different paths through the same landscape. Tonight, you wonder what your dream might be if no one was watching. No priest to interpret, no structure to shape it, just your mind, doing what it does when the world lets go of its grip for a few quiet hours. You lie back. No oil tonight, no chant, just breath, the warm stone. The night air moving slow, and the knowledge that somewhere beyond the temple walls someone else is dreaming too. maybe in straw, maybe in sand, maybe under the stars, unbothered by scrolls or serpents. You close your eyes, you think of them, and then you don't think at all. You wake slower this time, not because the dream was heavy actually, it was light. You were floating over the Nile, arms stretched wide, drifting with the current like a reed boat with no destination. There was no message, no animals, just warmth, stillness. It felt like memory without specifics. And for some reason, you're okay with not knowing what it meant. The priest doesn't ask you to interpret it today. He simply nods and places a hand on your shoulder before pointing you toward a different room, one you haven't entered yet. It's newer, brighter, less incense, more pillows. Fewer statues, more screens. Wait, screens? Yep, you're not in ancient Egypt anymore. Welcome to the modern dream clinic. At first glance, it looks nothing like the temple. Electrodes instead of ankhs, heart monitors instead of scrolls. The silence here buzzes slightly with air conditioning. But sit with it for a moment and you'll notice something familiar. Dim lighting, soft voices, and a sense of ritual. You're asked to lie down. You're given instructions. You're watched over as you sleep. Sound familiar? Sleep therapy clinics today are the closest thing we have to sacred temples of rest. People come with insomnia, night terrors, unresolved stress. They're hooked up to machines that track brain waves, eye movements, oxygen levels. And even though the tools are high tech, the mission is ancient: help people heal through sleep. Modern dream researchers are exploring wild things like targeted dream incubation, where audio cues are played during REM sleep to influence dream content. They're studying lucid dreaming to help patients manage trauma. They're building apps that track sleep cycles and use vibrations to gently nudge your dreams in a certain direction. Some of it sounds like science fiction. Some of it feels like something straight out of Serapis. As temple, there's even research into how cultural belief systems affect dream content. People who believe dreams carry meaning tend to have more vivid, emotionally resonant dreams. That's not coincidence, it's cognitive priming. If you expect the dream to matter, your brain delivers a more potent experience. Belief changes the lens. It's Freud meets the falcon god. And here's the kicker: in some clinics, therapists encourage patients to engage with their dreams in temple-like ways. Keep journals, set pre-sleep intentions, create soothing rituals before bed. Sounds a lot like dream incubation, doesn't it? Philosophers still argue whether these modern rituals are truly spiritual or just dressed up neuroscience, but maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the line between science and sacred has always been a little fuzzy. Even in a sterile lab, when the lights go dim and the sensors fade into background hum, what you're left with is you, your breath, your thoughts, your inner desert, still wide and silent. So tonight you imagine yourself back on your temple mat. But this time there's a sleep tracker on your wrist and a weighted blanket over your legs. Your gods are a little more clinical, and your dreams a bit more data-driven, but the feeling is the same. You close your eyes, and in that soft space between science and soul, you float again. The temple is quiet tonight, not just hushed, but settled, like even the stones have stopped thinking. You lie on your mat one last time, feeling the soft press of linen at your back, the warm breath of desert air just outside the walls. There's no chant, no incense, no priest hovering with metaphorical riddles. Just you, and the sand, and the rhythm of your own breathing. This is the final night. Not because the gods are done whispering, but because you no longer feel the need to listen so hard. There's peace now, a soft knowing, and not the kind that arrives with thunder or glowing serpents. The kind that slips in gently when you stop demanding answers. Your dreams tonight are different. Not visions, but feelings. Moments. You're walking through a market filled with silence. You're drinking from a cup that never empties. You see someone, maybe yourself, smiling without needing a reason. It's not linear. It doesn't need to be, that's the point. Because dreams, as the Egyptians knew, don't operate by rules. They unfold in waves. They carry symbols that can mean one thing today and something entirely different tomorrow. Healing doesn't happen in straight lines. It spirals, dances, circles back on itself. then moves on again, like the Nile, and now you understand. The rituals, the gods, the oils, the animals, they were never the point, they were invitations, ways to coax the mind into stillness, to believe in the possibility of rest, to step out of your waking chaos and enter the sanctuary of night. Modern therapists might call this internal alignment. Sleep researchers might frame it as a shift into parasympathetic mode. But to the temple, and maybe to you now, it's simpler. This is sacred sleep. Not because a god said so, but because you chose it to be. Fringe detail to leave with you. Archaeologists once found a single inscription on the wall of a forgotten healing chamber. It simply read, "He came in sorrow and woke up laughing." No names, no dates, just proof that whatever happened here, it worked. Philosophers still argue whether dreams matter at all, whether they fix anything, whether they mean anything, but you're no longer debating. You're already halfway gone. The torchlight flickers. Somewhere beyond the temple, the wind picks up just enough to rustle a fig tree. You roll onto your side, curl into the sound, and think this is enough. No answers needed, no interpretation necessary. The gods don't visit tonight, and you don't mind at all, and now the sand settles around you. The story slows, softens, becomes the kind of silence you can lean into. Like the hush just before dawn or the moment between waves, your breath evens out, your body grows heavier with each inhale and lighter with every exhale until the two balance each other like twin halves of the same moonlit coin. If you're still listening, you've done the hardest part. You've allowed yourself to slow down, to stretch out your thoughts like linen drying in a warm breeze. You've wandered with ancient gods, talked to snakes with suspiciously good advice, floated through dreams shaped like rivers and temples. And now, none of it needs to make sense. It only needs to feel safe. Let the edges of the room blur. Let the symbols from your own day rearrange themselves into something soft and harmless. A hallway without doors, a garden without names, a sky that never quite darkens or lightens, it just is. No more questions. No more scrolls. No more watching yourself from outside your own story. Only you sinking gently into the night. Only the breath. Only rest. Only sleep. Sweet dreams.